Thanks again, everyone, for being here. If you don't mind muting your mic when you're not actively speaking, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Excellent. Excellent. So just by way of a quick introduction, my name is Brittany Morgan. I'm the Economic Resilience Director at the Miami Foundation, where the Open for Business initiative is housed. This is our effort to support historically underserved small businesses and nonprofit organizations in South Florida with asset building. So that means the purchase of, critical business assets like technology, hardware, vehicles, and what have you. I'm also joined by Maria Cotto, the Executive Director of Partners for Self-Employment.
Good afternoon, everyone. We thank you for joining us today. As Brittany mentioned, we are recording this for anyone who is unable to stay throughout the call. We'll be posting this on our site, and we will be admitting additional participants as they come into the waiting room. What I will ask all of you to do is, if you've got any what we would consider personal, financial, or private information or questions that you have, that you not ask them in open forum. If you've got any questions that would include any private or personal information, that you ask them privately to either Brittany or myself. We'll do what we can to answer those questions, but we do have a presentation prepared for you today that we hope will answer all of your questions.
Excellent. That's a great introduction and a great reminder, Maria. What we're going to walk through today is just some broad guidance that you can use not only in this funding application for Open for Business, but when you're applying for funding anywhere in the future. But if you do have specific questions about your proposal, please hold those or schedule some time with us offline. So as mentioned, this is an information session that's really designed with you in mind. We want to make sure that your organization understands the review process, and we can have some opportunities for guidance and tips that will help strengthen the quality of your proposal. This allows you to not just be a better candidate for Open for Business funds, but it also allows you to be a candidate for other funding opportunities as well. And so again, we really appreciate you being here. I know this is an optional event, and we're really appreciative that you are here. I'm going to walk through for just one quick second an overview of the Open for Business program goals. While we do that, we do want to get a sense of if your organization is a nonprofit who applied for funding, or if you are a for-profit small business. And so if you could let us know whether you're representing the nonprofit or the small business community. The goal of Open for Business, as mentioned, is specifically to support historically underserved organizations that are small organizations in Miami-Dade County. This work has been made possible by a $20 million grant from Wells Fargo that we will distribute through the end of next year. So this is a 3-year program alongside 4 other U.S. communities. And as mentioned, we brought on Partners for Self-Employment. They are a local community-based lending institution that is administering the portion of this program for-profit small businesses. As a reminder, there's 3 different financial products through Open for Business. We have the microgrants for technology and equipment. We have the loan fund. And so if you're not aware of these other products, know that these are other financial opportunities, not just the microgrant, which we will be talking about today. So what is the microgrant? This is the application that most of you all submitted to. It is a 1-year grant to purchase either hardware, either software, or equipment and machinery. Applicants can request up to $20,000 when they apply. However, we did caution that it's not going to be possible to honor every funding request at that $20,000 amount. It is really critical that the funding requests includes either hardware, so those are hard physical technology devices, laptops, printers, etc., or the request is for software, different forms of licenses, Microsoft Office, accounting, direct mail, fundraising software, or equipment and machinery. So those are like non-technology equipment assets, whether that's massage tables, pizza ovens, microchip devices, what have you. And so this gives you, again, a nutshell about what the funding opportunity is intended for, how it can be used, and how the funding request should be structured. Just to give you a little bit of context about this first cycle of funding from Open for Business, we received a lot of applications. We received almost 300 applications in total. Approximately 100 of them were from the nonprofit sector. a little bit less than 175 from the for-profit businesses. Our nonprofits funding requests totaled $1.6 million, and we had just $300,000 this cycle to award. And this left us with an acceptance rate of about 25%. So 1 in every 4 nonprofit organizations was selected. For the for-profits, there was slightly more competition. Funding requests were for $3 million worth of technology and equipment, and we had approximately $500,000 to award this cycle. So first of all, just want to say that if you, given that you were not selected, this is not necessarily a testament to your organization's value, to the importance of your small business. This was an extremely competitive first round of funding, and we just wanted to give you a sense of the numbers of organizations that were funded. This should not discourage you from being able to reapply. However, we're going to walk through in a couple minutes the process that we use to make some decisions and how you can provide more clarity and specificity in your application in the future. And so we're going to walk through now some of the top reasons, just summarizing why applications did not score as high. Maria, would you like to walk us through some of this?
Absolutely. So we made these applications, especially this first round, very specific about what was allowed and what wasn't allowed. So some of the major gaps or items that did not allow certain applications to score as high as they might have been able to is applicants requested funding for more than one category of funding. So for example, we recognize that a lot of times if you buy a laptop, you're going to want to purchase the software to put on that laptop. Unfortunately, hardware and software were 2 different categories. So either you received less funding, we had companies that received less funding because we were only able to provide funding for one of those items, or they scored lower because they tried to get 2 funding options and it just wasn't available. Another issue that we saw quite a bit of was requesting funding for non-allowable categories. So again, we recognize that sometimes you're going to buy a laptop, and that laptop could be part of a hiring plan that you have for your organization. So you wanted to also be able to attract the salary dollars needed to fund that position, the position that would be attached to that laptop. Although your business plan may very well have been able to show that the laptop equals a job creation equals the need for a salary, salaries just was not an option that we had. We also had individuals that may have included something along the lines of a vehicle in their funding proposal, and vehicles are something that are allowed under the loan program. So we very specifically divided what is allowed as a grant funding option and what is a loan funding option so that they would not overlap. And then, of course, we had some individuals that inadvertently may have disregarded the eligibility requirements. And in order for a business to apply and to be considered, all of these eligibility pre-requirements had to be met. So the business had to have $1 million in revenue, had less than $1 million in revenue. So if the business had more than $1 million in revenue, we just were not able to proceed. We very specifically wanted to target historically disadvantaged entrepreneurs. This was a requirement, etc. So disregarding the eligibility or pre-qualification requirements is one of those issues. We also needed some very specific information when it came to funding. So not being specific with your funding request, i.e., not completing your proposed use of funds and having, attached vendor estimates, what could be an issue or was an issue. And then, of course, we are looking at long-term impact. So in the narrative questions, when you answer the narrative questions going forward in your next application, we need you to be very, very specific on what is when you answer those narrative questions, what you're using this for, what the long-term impact of this financing is beyond the actual acquisition of the asset. So we'll go into a little further on in the presentation, we'll go into some examples, but these were the highlights of some common reasons why applications may not have scored high enough. So applicants are required to meet all of the following requirements. So it wasn't one or. The small business has to be located in Miami-Dade County. So that means the business had to be registered, whether it's a for-profit business or a nonprofit business. The registration must be local. The organization had to be owned or led by an individual from a historically disadvantaged background. One of the main things that we saw as we were curing applications is individuals selected one of these items, but they're like, in some cases, we had individuals that could have selected more items. So the more disadvantaged, historically disadvantaged or underserved communities that you represent, the more consideration there would be in application. So when you answer this question, understand that we're only using this data for the purposes of providing additional points to your application. So whether or not you are Black, or whether or not you're a veteran, or whether or not you're a person with disabilities is not going to affect how we review the application for the purpose of funding you, but it will affect the points that we can assign to that particular question. So you want to make sure that you are selecting all that apply to you. One of the things that we were very clear on is that we want to be able to service businesses that have been in existence for at least 2 years. So we know that these are businesses that have some establishment behind them, and what they need is some funding in order to move their business from where it is right now to where it is that they want to be, some goals that they've set for themselves. So businesses must be in existence for 2 years. And of course, their operating budget must be under $1 million. And all of these must be met in order for the application to be scored.
Excellent. Thanks for walking us through that, Maria. I think it's really important for folks to understand what they need, the criteria they need to meet to be able to apply. And then once you meet that, then is when the scoring process and the review process begins. So after the application deadline, we wait to look at anyone's applications until after the deadline, so everyone has a fair chance of being assessed. And then we take every single proposal, almost 300 of them, and we gave them a rating on these 6 dimensions that were published when the funding opportunity was published. And so, as Maria mentioned, if you represent a historically underserved background, then you are eligible for funding. But we also take a closer look during the scoring process to see how well your staff perhaps also reflect that, and whether the entrepreneur or the organization lead embodies more than one dimension. So for example, if the organization's lead or the CEO is both Latino, a veteran, and a person with disabilities, for example, that was looked at during the scoring process. And if they have any staff, whether the staff at that company or organization reflect the demographics of the surrounding community. The second thing we looked at is whether or not this organization understands how their good or service creates value and serves the local community. We had a number of applications from organizations who, for instance, were providing services internationally. They are maybe, they do provide a valuable good or service, but had trouble communicating their understanding of how they create value. And so that's just a couple of reasons why an organization may not have scored as highly on that second dimension. The third is whether the organization has strong organizational and financial capacity. And so this includes the strength of your financial documents, making sure that the business is solvent and is going to be able to continue to generate revenue or receive donations in the future to remain operational. And also that documents are clear and consistent. For instance, that the budget is in a generally acceptable format, making sure that all of the registrations are in order and have not lapsed. And so those are things that we look at to make sure that we're rewarding organizations that are in compliance and that are operating legitimately. The fourth scoring criteria, and so this is not an eligibility requirement to apply for funding, but we do look favorably a lot at organizations that have jobs, that are employer organizations. And we also look at whether those jobs are quality jobs, which we defined in the proposal as meeting a minimum, I believe it's $18 an hour, that you're offering benefits, and that you make an effort to hire folks from the adjacent community or folks from marginalized backgrounds. So again, if you're a sole proprietor, you could still apply for funding and have a chance of scoring highly on the other dimensions, but to reward organizations that are creating and offering jobs in our community, this is a dimension that your proposal was reviewed on. The fifth dimension is whether this funding that we're providing for technology and equipment will really help transform or catalyze your organization. So in your proposal, you had a very clear plan for growth. For instance, this device is going to minimize errors, or this device is going to allow you to open a new location. You were able to articulate a clear rationale for why the funding is needed now. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on that one. And then the sixth and final review criteria, for which a couple of extra points were awarded, is if your organization or business was located in one of the 7 communities that we established as part of this initiative. And that includes Allapattah, Liberty City and Little Haiti, Overtown, Miami Gardens, Opa-locka, North Miami Beach, Homestead, Florida City, Richmond Heights, and Perrine. And to be clear, it's not a requirement that your business be located in any of those neighborhoods, but we want to definitely give some extra points to organizations that are based in communities that have been historically underserved. And so this is a look at how every single application in the program was assessed. Provided that they met these initial eligibility requirements, we then assess every proposal based on these 6 dimensions. And we're just going to dive in and give a little bit more specificity about what this looks like. So when we say have strong organizational and financial capacity, these are the things that make a proposal stand out as strong. So for instance, the financial statements that were provided show that there is a steady growth in revenue or maintenance of revenue year over year. This contrasts with a proposal where the budget or financial statements maybe showed outstanding debt, running at a deficit for multiple years, or severe unexplained losses. This doesn't mean that we will only fund companies that are extremely profitable. This means that your financial statements show that you will be able to continue to operate. Let's say that we make a capital investment in your business. We want to make sure that you will remain operational in the upcoming years to be able to use that technology or that equipment. Another way that we assess organizational capacity is, for instance, in your staffing roster. This shows us that the organization is adequately resourced. The converse, a weak proposal is a proposal where the budget line items don't add up. I know that we have some proposals where they explain that they have 10 FTEs, but there was no line item in the budget to substantiate paying those employees. And then lastly, an organization with strong capacity understands their market share. They have a reasonable expectation of their growth potential. By contrast, organizations that cannot articulate their plan for growth, for instance, how they're going to acquire more customers, how they're going to increase their revenue, were rated as not as strong on this criteria. Here's another example when we talk about using the funding to impact your trajectory. We rate proposals as strong when they have a very clear understanding of how this asset that you're requesting funding for will impact your business. For example, an investment in this type of soft email, direct mail software will increase our number of sales conversions, right? We also found that applications that score higher had a very clear plan for how they were going to buy the asset. They enumerated the exact number of devices that they were going to purchase, an approximate estimate for them, where they were going to buy them. This contrasts to poorer scoring proposals, proposals that were not scored as highly. There was no specificity about where they were going to get the asset. There was a lack of understanding about how much it costs to procure it in today's market, et cetera. And also the rationale for buying that asset was either extremely clear. For instance, we had a technology consultant that suggested that we create a digital invoicing system versus an unclear explanation of why it is that your business needs this asset right now. So this just gives you a little bit a deeper dive on what it looks like to have a higher or a lower scoring proposal along these 6 dimensions that the proposals were scored on. And so next, we're going to give you some real examples from real proposals that we received this funding round, and we'll show you what a really excellent response looks like compared to one that was not as highly scored. I'm going to show you some examples from our nonprofit applications. I see we have a number of nonprofits on the line today, and then I'll pass it to Maria, who can walk through some of the examples we received for the small business applications. So here's an example from a nonprofit, 2 nonprofit proposals. We asked every applicant to please describe in a few sentences the proposed use of funds. In addition, provide detail on the items that you plan to purchase, how you will acquire them, and how you will deploy them. This response on the left has a lot of specificity. The exact number of barcode scanners and the exact number of laptops was listed. This user explains to us how the use of these scanners are going to allow them to be more efficient. It gives us more clarity about the data that are going to be collected. Also tells us that this organization will have streamlined data collection, improve the accuracy, minimize paper waste, prevent duplicate disbursements. It's really excellent because it not only tells us how many items they want to buy, how it will help the organization. If we contrast that to the proposal that we received on the right, there is simply a lack of specificity. There's no specific number around the devices that will be purchased. The software, there's no specific name of the software product, service, or vendor. It is unclear. Run our operations is a little open-ended. And so what we would just like to see is a little bit more specificity and detail so that we really understand how this asset, how this technology is going to transform your organization and make your job a little easier. So these are the responses that we received for the purpose question. I'll give one more example under the impact question. We asked applicants to anticipate the impact as a result of having this technology and to please include some specific indicators or metrics. On the left, we have a different applicant who explained that this hardware will help them grow the number of participants in each cohort, which may also result in them hiring another staff person. There is an approximate number of students who will be served by implementing this new hardware. And one of the outcomes is that a third of these students will become coding certified. And so this helps us really, really understand the volume, the number, the impact on both the organization in terms of staffing, but also the participants and young people in this program. To the right, we have a response that did not score as highly. While we do agree that the technology will be beneficial, it's a little bit vague in talking about creating job opportunities. It's unclear how the technology will immediately create job opportunities. There is some introduction about, hobbies that could potentially transition to a career. There's a lack of specificity that doesn't really tell us exactly how this technology will create job opportunities. How will this technology help people transition into career? And so we hope that this gives you a really concrete example of what we are looking for when we see these types of questions. So the questions in the nonprofit applications are similar, but slightly different than the small businesses. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Maria, who will walk you through some of the examples from higher and lower scoring small business proposals.
Thank you. So our question was slightly different. And before we go into the difference between some of the higher scoring and lower scoring proposal, I think it's important that we all understand that if you're because your response may have been considered a lower scoring response, did not make your response inaccurate, maybe just not as complete as another response. So we asked individuals to describe how you'll be investing the funds you're applying for, include a description of the asset and its use within your business, how the asset will increase or enhance your business, your plan for meeting increased demand, and how you will reach new additional customers, and how having this asset will help your business reach future goals. So we had to shorten what we copy and pasted here. But the higher scoring proposal, much as Brittany explained previously, had more specificity, right? 270 supermarket stores at the Healthy Living aisle, bringing brand new awareness to sales. There were some very specifics here. This would allow over a 12-month period an increase in sales for specific dollar amounts. There were some increases in e-trucks that will sell a specific type of drink or specific types of drinks. And there was some very specific numbers here. Like I said, I had to truncate this response because it just wouldn't have fit. But the specificity here allowed an individual reviewer that is not an expert in this particular business to understand what the purpose was of this. And what I think a lot of applicants may not have taken into account is the fact that while we may be professional grant reviewers or loan application reviewers, we're not experts or professionals in your particular field. So so what we need is some real specificity so that we understand what it is that you're going to do and how it's going to affect your business long-term, because we just don't have that expertise. So a lower scoring proposal, while the answer may not have been, like I said, incorrect, just not as complete, basically explains to us that using this was a $10,000 request, that basically using, this $10,000 would allow this particular person to purchase product from a distributor without being a specific distributor. With this help, this $10,000 grant will allow us to begin producing our own product. But there was no specificity around how much of that product, what the financial impact of being able to produce your own product will have on the business. And then will allow the product to be produced at a lower price, but there wasn't a comparison for long-term budget impact. And because the reviewers just don't have the expertise in your business, we were not able to basically measure long-term impact in any significant way here. Another narrative question that we asked is for the businesses to describe impacts of the funding beyond the acquisition of the asset, right? So we know immediately you're going to acquire that asset. What does it mean beyond that? Include any new jobs to be created, existing jobs to be retained, if you're going to be able to provide benefits to staff that were not previously available, any climate implications, or increase in community access to goods or service. And here what we're talking about is, are you going to be able to provide a good or a service to the community that the community may not have had access to previously? So a higher scoring narrative, and again, this is truncated, we kind of took pieces out, basically tells us exactly that this particular service is not something that's readily available in Liberty City, Little Haiti, Overtown, outside of this particular applicant, that the applicant, that's the need for the service. And then of course, we made significant gains in an art by providing high quality jobs, over $1.2 million to our local economy. So that's very specific. Again, impact is measurable when people recognize themselves in you. So there's very specific impact where they're allowing a community to see themselves in art, and that opportunity may not be otherwise available. A lower scoring proposal explains regrettably why there won't be a measurable impact. However, this is one of those areas where we're scoring impact. So while this is a complete answer and it is an honest answer and an appreciated answer, it's just not, we can't provide points for a proposal that is telling us up front that there is no community impact. What I will encourage all of you to do is, even if you cannot see, readily cannot see your community impact, I would venture to say most businesses do have some community impact, and maybe, talk through this type of question with your advisors, other professionals in your area, so that you can basically better articulate any impact that you may have.
Excellent. Thank you, Maria. I hope that those are really specific and concrete examples for you all to know, not just what it takes to be eligible, but what we are looking for and the 6 different dimensions that we score on when we look at proposals. And so we're almost done with the content. I just want to let you know a couple of next steps and what to expect from this program over the next 2 years. And then we'll open it up in case there's any other broad questions, but if you do have a specific question about your application, we ask that you hold those for email. So very quick, the next round of funding, we're expecting to reopen the first week of March. And so this includes the Microgrant for technology and equipment. This includes the loan fund for things like vehicles, inventory, or remodeling. And then also the collective real estate product offered through the Miami Foundation. We're very excited that this next round of funding, we're going to have technical assistance providers available. Technical assistance providers are organizations that will work with you free of charge to help you with things like your financial statements, accounting, your business plan, and your funding requests. And so we'll announce that list of providers in March when the funding cycles reopen, and you can work with them to help enhance your proposal. And then we also definitely recommend that you subscribe to the Open for Business newsletter if you have not already. There is a newsletter that we send out approximately once a quarter to advertise new funding opportunities. And so I'll put that link in the chat so that if you're not already subscribed to business newsletter, we can get you on that listserv. And so in terms of contact information, I also everyone, sorry about that. I lost my internet connection momentarily, but we are back. And so was mentioning the contact information where you can get more answers if you have follow-up questions. And so if you are a 501c3, a school or a church, please email the Miami Foundation about your microgrant application. And this is the website where you applied in the past and will reapply. If you are a for-profit, small business, LLC, a corporation, et cetera, you'll work with our partners at Partners for Self-Employment at Maria's organization, and that contact address is on the screen. And so I'm going to go ahead and pause now. I know there were some questions in the chat right before I lost internet connection. And we're, again, appreciate your time. I know this was an optional chance for you to get some more feedback on your proposal, and we are very appreciative that you chose to attend today.
Absolutely. So I don't see any questions in the chat, but feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. Again, we want to keep these as unspecific as possible. So any private financial information, please don't share.
We have been asked on a few occasions if you'll get a copy of this recording and slides. Absolutely. We'll send them out through the newsletter. We'll also upload them to our website. And it may be especially helpful when you're preparing your proposal next round to look at some of the examples. Obviously, you know, you wouldn't want to copy and paste because your proposal is going to be unique, but this helps gives you a flavor of what it is that applicants wrote that garnered a high scoring response.
So we do have a question in the chat. Is it okay to email your question to the email provided? It is okay to send your question to the email provided. Just please make sure that your question is specific to your proposal. So one of the questions that we've received quite often over the last couple of weeks as we shared funded, who was selected and who wasn't, is what compare me to another proposal. That we're not able to do. But if you have a specific question on, so the question shouldn't be what did X business have that I didn't have. If your question is something that's specific to your business, I mean, we're happy to answer them. We also want you to keep in mind that the scoring was done and it's competitive, right? So you could have had a very strong proposal and just did not score high enough because of certain factors that might have been beyond your control, right? So additional points are given for communities that have more intersection with disadvantaged communities. So individuals that had more than let's say that represented more than one disadvantaged community may have gotten more points. That's not something necessarily that you can control. So we want you to keep that in mind as well. Somebody's asking, are we able to know how we scored?
Yeah, that's a great question, Melissa. We are definitely happy to provide you with feedback about what about your proposal was either missing or could be improved, but we're not planning to share the actual scores or numbers at this time. And so if you send an email and point to your application, we can tell you some more specifics, but it will be a lot of what you saw today, you know, more specificity about what you're requesting, more clarity, and a better understanding of how it will impact your business. Jennifer asked how many people review the applications. That's a great question. At the Miami Foundation, at least 2 people review every application. So there's more than one set of eyes. I believe that was the same with your group, Maria.
Yes. So we had we had applications that scored below a threshold. We actually had a third set of eyes look at them. So it was 2 to 3 individuals.
I received a direct message, and I believe it is for Maria's group. And somebody is asking for a specific debrief on their application.
So, I mean, we're happy to answer any questions that you have. As Brittany mentioned, we're not sharing scores, and we're unable to share information from other applicants for comparison purposes. But I'm happy to talk with you to determine, debrief, exactly what you mean by that.
I've got a question in the chat about choosing one category. Yes, that is correct. Italian Vice. We included on the website and on the funding guidelines to be able to maximize the number of businesses that can be financially supported through this program. You do have to select one. And so for some applicants, that meant a suite of software that they are now able to deploy, both in the areas of accounting, project management, et cetera. Or for instance, multiple items of equipment and machinery, so conference table, conference chairs, et cetera. But we are at this time restricting applicants to one category of the 3 so that we can fund as many organizations as possible. Somebody has asked about getting specific reviewer comments. And so we can give some more specific feedback about your proposal if you send a request, but please note that we will not share any verbatim numbers that your application was scored or comments from those reviewers. So Melissa is asking, yes, QuickBooks is a form of software, and a computer or a printer is a form of hardware. And so making either hardware investments in your organization, printers, scanners, photocopiers, photography, videography devices, et cetera. One distinction is that, technology hardware are those technology items that you can touch and feel. Equipment and machinery are non-technology items that you can touch and feel, massage table, pizza oven, et cetera. And then software are things that you use in your computer. Maybe they're cloud-based, maybe you bought them in a box. We got all types of requests, accounting software, fundraising software, inventory management, e-commerce, website development, et cetera. So I got a question from Ja about the inventory. So inventory is actually covered under our second Open for Business product. It is not intended to purchase inventory with a grant, but if you're interested, we have a 3% loan to purchase inventory. Your repayment period is anywhere from 1 to 5 years. That's an incredibly low interest rate. It's way cheaper than, for instance, putting it on a credit card or getting a conventional bank loan. So if you were interested in vehicles, inventory, or renovations and remodeling, please know that we have a very low interest loan fund available.
What I will add, Ja, is that if you are looking to purchase inventory, that you go to the application web. I'm assuming that you're a for-profit business. That you go to the application website, take a look at the supporting documents listed in the resource tab, so that you can better understand the requirements around what inventory and type of inventory is allowed.
Yep, that's a great addition. And so if anyone is interested in this loan product, for example, I know we received an application for the technology and equipment microgrant that included a request for a van. If you are interested in financing a vehicle for your business or nonprofit, please take a look at the miamiofbloans.org website. Again, I cannot stress enough how attractive of an interest rate 3% is. That is better than you will find at a car dealership. And so just know that this is a possibility. Maria, do you want to talk a little bit about the credit, the way that credit is used to underwrite the loans?
Absolutely. So credit is checked, and it is a hard pull, so that you know, but it is not checked until your application is complete and has scored high enough to be considered. So as Brittany mentioned, we wait for all of the applications to be in, for the actual application deadline to close. and we review all the applications together so that everybody has a fair chance. So we do a score of all of the applications, and then we look at those based on the dollar amount that they're requested and the maximum amount that we're allowed to give in any one cycle. We look at those that have scored high enough to make it into this round of funding, and then we run the credit. So your credit is not run off the bat. Your credit would only be run if you're actually in the running to get a loan. Credit is not the deciding factor. It is, however, a way to gain points. So there's a lot of ways to get points on your loan application. We went over some of them. They're very similar. Employer firms, social impact, wide range of ways to get this. And then you get points based on your credit score. So let's say a credit score of 0 to, and this is just an example, right? So 0 to 300 may earn you an additional 2 points. 300 to 650, 300 to 500, let's say will earn you an additional 5 points. Above that, an additional 6 or 7 points. So it's just a way to it's a way to earn points, but not a way to lose points, and not designed, the way the point system is designed, it's not designed to be the deciding factor. I hope that answered the question.
That's really helpful. There are some more questions about the loan offering, Maria. So for instance,
I apologize. It looks like we lost Whitney again. So the recommended credit score, so there is no recommended credit score. So like I said, it's not designed to eliminate anyone. It is just a way to earn points on your application. Somebody asked if we are checking both business and personal. So this round, we did not check business credit. And we did not check business credit because when surveying the business clients that we received applications for, they just did not have credit profiles. So we look at personal credit always. And we look at personal credit always because you're personally guaranteeing this loan. So in the event that your business is no longer able to make the payments for your loan, the owners, whether there's one owner or 5 owners, the owners become personally responsible for the debt. So we do always check business. We do always check personal credit. This time around, we did not check business credit. That may not be the case going forward. Are you able to refinance a work vehicle to take advantage of the lower interest rate? So financing individuals out of what we consider predatory debt is a possibility with the loan. However, there's a couple of things that your request must meet. One, the loan that you currently have must be considered predatory. So we have a very attractive rate of 3%. Just because your loan is 5%, does it make that a predatory loan? So usually in the state of Florida is 18.5%. So we're looking at a loan that's predatory on an asset that you still have in your possession, that is still operational and is still working and is exclusive to your business. So if it meets those requirements, so predatory, still in your possession, and exclusive to your business, then we can look at refinancing your van or vehicle or whatnot. One of the things that we do ask you to keep in mind is that we want to make sure that the vehicle, either that you're purchasing or that you're trying to refinance, makes sense for your business. So if you are running a childcare service, a Tesla is not going to pick up the kids, right? You need a van for that. So we're not going to finance you out of a debt on a Tesla, as an example. So make sure that it makes sense for your business. What if you're a musician for profit? Would they be considered grant worthy? So I think that so I can't answer that question, right? So the musician has to have less than a certain amount of revenue, has to represent the target market, has to be purchasing something that's an allowable asset, has to make under $1 million, has to have been in business, so actually doing business as their own business for a minimum of 2 years. So there's these requirements. So being a musician does not eliminate you, but you do have to meet the basic requirements regardless of the industry that you're in.
Excellent. We've got a lot of great questions coming in the chat. It sounds like there's a lot of energy around the loan fund. I just want you all to know that we will be offering another TA info session about applying for a loan when the funding cycle reopens. And so if you're interested in that, please know that we'll offer a separate session around the loan when funding reopens in early March. Great question. The next funding cycle will open in early March. Thank you, Jennifer, for your note in the chat. We are very appreciative that everyone came to apply or came to get feedback. So some more questions. You can apply for both the loan and the grant. You can apply for more than one financial product through Open for Business. However, please note that once you are selected for that product, you cannot reapply. So if you get a micro grant next round, you cannot continue to apply for a micro grant, but you can apply for more than one product at a time. And I know that there's another question about credit. Would you like to take that, Maria?
Yeah, so Ja's asking us, what if you have good business credit? Will personal credit still be pulled? So the answer to that is yes. Because you're going to be personally, you and or any other owners of the business are going to be personally guaranteeing that debt in the event that the business is no longer able to make payments. Yes, the personal credit is run. And again, I want to reiterate that credit is not designed to eliminate you. It is designed to give points on your application. So the way that the application is set up, if your personal credit is not what we would consider fair or good, does not eliminate you. It will determine the amount of points that you get under that particular criteria. But no one scoring criteria is designed to completely eliminate your application from the running.
Yeah, that's a great reminder, Maria. And just, to restate that, this is not a type of loan where you must have a minimum credit score or credit is the primary determining factor for being eligible. We've adopted and we use some alternative underwriting techniques to give some businesses a chance of receiving funds. And so Melissa's asked about what fair or good represents. You know that number off the top of your head, Maria, but just there's also credit score diagrams on the web that you can.
Yeah, there are some credit score diagrams on the web. We look at what would be good, and our number is a little bit actually lower than what the credit score diagrams on the web are, because we recognize that most of our small businesses are coming to get non-traditional funding because they may not currently qualify for traditional funding. So we're looking at good as being about like excellent would be in the 600, like mid 600s. Good is about 550, 585. And I'm saying about because I don't have the scoring sheet in front of me. So we basically set ranges to provide points for.
All this to say, we don't want your credit score to be a limiting factor in applying. Like, don't write yourself off or think that you're not going to be eligible before at least having a more individualized conversation with Maria's team.
Yeah. So I think the question here is if 500 and up to 600 or no judgment. So we look at a wide variety of things, right? So we and then we put back points for certain things, right? So we do look at whether or not there are current judgments. We look at whether or not there are current delinquencies. So if your number's like low, right? Your number's 400, but and I'm just throwing a number out there, right? Your number's 400, but you've got like all your payments made on time, and you've got no judgments, and you just maybe have no credit or low utilization of credit, or not enough credit lines reporting. Those are not going to deduct points from you. Is I think what the question is here. Yeah. Okay. Good. That was the question.
Excellent. Well, we have about 7 minutes left, but we don't necessarily need to take up the time if the questions are coming to a close. I'm going to put that contact information slide up one more time. Please take note. Already getting some good questions over email. Really appreciate again your time today. We're going to upload this recording and the slides, and we really hope to see another application from you in future funding cycles. One thing I failed to mention, we do have our next and our second funding cycle opening at the beginning of March. But we'll also be doing this twice a year. So we'll have a funding cycle this year opening in March. We'll have another one at the end of the year around Q3. And then we will do this 2 more times next year as well. And so perhaps if right now isn't the best time to improve your application, please know that we have at least 4 total funding opportunities coming up before the end of next year. Thank you everyone for your time. We really appreciate it. We'll hang around in case there's any other questions, and we look forward to seeing you over email and in the next funding cycle. Thank you again.
Mr. or Miss Pochi, if you could in a private message send me your contact information, so that I don't have to dig for it directly after